Of all the early American mysteries and legends, I think treasure mysteries are the ones I like the best. But I never thought I'd discover the explanation for one of them. On this trip to Arizona, I was looking for more confirmation of this world culture that I've discovered. On the flight, I was watching Den of Thieves too. Couldn't help but notice it almost seemed like those cliffs were carved in some way. This scene is supposed to be in Sardinia, not far from where we filmed all this stuff in Sicily. I would assume it's CGI, but they had to have some reference source. On arriving, the biggest discovery I made, I think, was that In-N-Out is the best burger joint. And the rocks outside are cool too. But when I headed to Tucson, it hit me. The Superstition Mountains were just there off in the distance, and they looked strikingly similar to the mountains just outside of Monte Cofano, where the temple is. And you can't think about the Superstition Mountains without the Lost Dutchman. I've already proven that most of these natural nuggets are most likely statue fragments. They too fall under this geometry that we've been discovering related to this culture. If that's true, and there's any chance that these mountains happen to be actually structures somehow, well, then it makes sense that the Dutchman, what he actually found was probably a chamber full of artifacts rather than a gold mine that was naturally formed. A pretty wild suggestion, actually, and if it were true, we should find other examples, right? We do at Picacho Peak. It appears we have a Zephyr, the god of the west wind. For me, this kind of confirms a theory of mine that some of the beliefs held by the ancients were actually much older than the ancients themselves. When I was finding things like Medusa snakes on these artifacts and that carving on the megalith, I couldn't help but think that the ancients got it from this. There's more evidence of this if you consider what Plato says in the Critias. It would kind of make sense. Across I-10, you got the Arizona Sphinx. Kind of looks more like a squirrel with a couple nuts in its mouth. But, we'll call it the Sphinx. Not even close. But in reality, what this is probably just another structure that happens to represent some deity or just one of these serpents, just like the rest of them. Most of the time, when I find things, they either have a representation of some type of star in their mouth or an egg. When you get into Marana, you can find some pretty amazing tacos across from Dragon Mountain. One thing I definitely didn't think I would find is a duplicate of my fossilized dragon head. This dog dragon seems to be in the Chinese style, as I previously pointed out. Now, I understand people laughing at me about saying Monte Cofano is a match to one of these previously identified artifacts. It's just a 20-degree angle. Understandable. But this thing, even I didn't think I would find this. But we had our priorities straight and headed to Miss Saigon across from the University of Arizona. But on the way there, I noticed this mountain looked similar to Monte Cofano. I eventually discovered that they're both 20 degrees and those ridge lines are identical. It blew my mind, but it made sense when I saw this reel from Mysteries of the Deep Lake Tahoe. He was complaining about this landslide anomaly and the official explanation for it. I couldn't help but notice it looked strikingly similar to the general shape of Monte Cofano. These were all clearly structures, and Monte Cofano has been confirmed to be a temple at one time. So according to Plato, if the world was covered in temples, and that's what the temples look like as we confirmed in Sicily, well, it makes sense that that should be the structure that he finds. We should find those all over the place. You guys might not realize this, but this explains that controversy around the Grand Canyon and the potential artifacts and structures that might be found in the bottom. In fact, when you consider that cataclysm, this would make complete sense.